Hey, it's Heidi Rain. Welcome back to another episode of Addiction, Codependency, and Toxic Relationship Recovery. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Heidi Rain. I'm a relationship expert who specializes in the link between codependency and addiction and helps you heal from the toxic relationships in your life and the impact of those relationships. And today's topic is going to be how to break free. What are the steps to break free from toxic relationship patterns? Not just a toxic relationship, but patterns of a toxic relationship that are like a dead end merry-go-round, a cycle of pain that we continue to inflict on ourselves over and over, and we can't seem to break that cycle. My goal at HeidiRain.com, where we have programs and opportunities for you to learn about your toxic relationships and help you break free. Our goal is to end generations of cycles with people and patterns. Many times we are stuck in these dynamics that are toxic and dysfunctional, or in relationships with addicts and alcoholics, and we don't even recognize how toxic it really is. So much of the work that I do here on YouTube and on my podcast is straight up education. It's like Jeff Foxworthy back in the day. He was like, you might be a redneck if, well, you might be in a toxic thing if, you might be codependent if. And we're going to dive into these 5 ways to finally break free from these patterns once and for all. So let me pull up my handy dandy notes because I don't want to miss a thing. Listen, the first step to anything, as we know, you cannot fix what you don't see. You cannot change what you don't acknowledge. And so many of us are going through life with like blinders on, this like half look, like I want to see, but not all of it. Because honestly, the truth of the situation is hard for us to see sometimes. We are afraid that if we see the truth of a situation, we're going to have to take action. Many of us are in long-term relationships where we are terrified that if we actually look at how bad this thing is, that we're actually going to have to get out of this thing or take steps that we are not sure if we want to take. So here's the thing. We're not going to go faster than you're ready to go. Ever. We're not going to make you do any, I'm not going to make you do anything you're not ready to do. I'm going to help you wake up to the reality of your relationship challenges at your own pace. Some people wake up wide in the morning and they're like, both bounce out of bed, not me, by the way, but bounce out of bed, both feet off the ground, they're ready to tackle the day. Other of us take a minute, we don't want to wait. We're not ready yet. We want to wake up. We got to have our coffee. We got to let things come to us over time. And that's okay. That everybody, comes to their own understanding when that is the right timing for you. So the first step in breaking free from a toxic or dysfunctional relationship, any patterns you're having, is awareness around the pattern you're stuck in the first place. We all know awareness is the first step. You remember those? I don't know if you're as old as I am. You probably aren't, but those after school specials always had this rainbow with a star. And it was like, the more you know. And it was like, educational purposes. And that's, yeah, the more you know, the better equipped you are to deal with whatever you're dealing with. And I know this is such an issue for us that is why I created a codependency test reel. It's really a dysfunction test. It's like, what is your flavor of codependency? Are you even codependent? What is up with this thing? And if you go over to HeidiRain.com, you can take that assessment. It's called the Codependent Attachment Personality Pattern Test. It's very fancy. Wearing my glasses. So I need to put my glasses on so I look serious. It's the Codependent Attachment Personality Pattern Test, and it's going to identify your unique flavor of codependency so that you can start to gain some awareness on the level of toxicity that you have. How toxic is this thing, right? What patterns are you enacting? And just to give you an idea of some of the patterns that we don't know that we're in, some of these dynamics, the patterns codependency is a co-addicted relationship. And one flavor of toxicity requires another flavor of toxicity on the other side. I'm wearing lots of coins today. I have my coin necklace, my coin earrings, my coin bracelet, and two sides of the same coin might show up differently. For example, here's what I'm saying. two types of toxic. One type of toxic is a controlling person. This is a pattern of somebody. You'll find out, you can take the assessment and you can get the controller, which is one of the patterns. A controlling personality pattern is somebody who attempts to make you convince you how to think, feel, and behave. And it could be malicious, where they're trying to control you and using fear and guilt and shame and manipulation, or it can be more benevolent, where they think they're being helpful to try to control you, but actually it's hurting you through lecturing you and criticizing and trying to fix you or whatever. We're controlling people. So that's one flavor of a toxic relationship pattern. But on the other side of that coin is the other type of person, which is a pleaser, and a controller needs a pleaser. And a pleasing toxic relationship pattern is where you constantly violate your own standards and what you want in order to meet the needs of another person or keep the other person happy. And so the pleaser and the controller will get into this dysfunctional toxic soup, and they'll marinate in there together. And that's the flavor of dysfunction that comes from that toxic pattern. Well, how do you break that toxic pattern? The first step is you recognize, oh my God, I'm the other side of that coin. I'm the pleaser and they're the controller, or they're the controller and I'm the pleaser. And if you have somebody that's dysfunctional but insightful, like, self-help junkie wants to know their flavor of dysfunction too. That's kind of how I was. I wanted to know, what my flavor was. They can take the assessment and you can too. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to find these patterns line up. Now, if at any point you are ready to break free totally from these patterns, you can skip all this, take the assessment, and send me a message. Go over to HeidiRain.com and learn more about breaking free from the pattern. Another dysfunctional toxic relationship pattern and awareness step one around is there's a withholder pattern. And you might notice somebody who withholds their affection, attention, approval. They're hot and cold with you. They're like a Jekyll and Hyde. One day they're here, the next day they're not. You kind of don't know where they sit. Do they love you or hate you? You never really know. They want to be with you. They don't. Well, a withholder, in order to enact that toxic pattern, has to have a little friend on the other side of that coin, and that is the clinger pattern. And clingers and withholders hook up, and they get into their dysfunctional flavor where we're clinging and I'm withholding, and then I turn into the withholder, and now you cling, and we enact this pattern back and forth. Now again, you can find out your flavor of dysfunction or codependent attachment pattern over at HeidiRain.com, where I created the assessment of one of the 8 patterns. You'll figure out which one you're enacting. Another awareness around a pattern you might be enacting would be the victim pattern. Somebody in your life that constantly is a victim. They're never responsible. It's always somebody else's fault. The reason they are the way they are is because of this or that. And they don't take responsibility. Blame is the name of the game, shifting responsibility. Well, that person cannot enact that pattern successfully in a toxic relationship without their co-partner, their co-addict, their codependent person. And that person is the fixer. Every victim needs a hero. So the fixer comes in, runs to the rescue, tries to help the victim, rescue them out of their dire straits situation, and eventually becomes resentful because the victim stays the victim and even your help's not working. And you're like, but if you just do what I tell you to do. So you see the toxic dances that we do with one another. So I encourage you, again, go over to HeidiRain.com and take the assessment to see what pattern you're enacting, and then it'll help to become more clear. I also have a playlist here on codependency and toxic relationship recovery that'll show the codependent attachment patterns in more detail. Each pattern has their own 5 criteria, and I go in depth for each video there. So check that out for sure. Now, let's move on to the second step. Let's say you've taken my self-awareness course and or the assessment, and you see, okay, I'm a fixer. All right, I see that. I see I'm with the victim. The second step is going to be in healing is always going to be boundaries. And boundaries, not just like, oh, I'm going to tell these people to stop doing this, but it's boundaries around a couple of things. Number one, what are you available for, and what are you no longer available for in the world of relationships? What is your North Star? What are you shooting for? How do you want to feel? And we do this inside of our course, our toxic relationship recovery course. One of the whole modules is around needs. What do I need? And we do this exercise called North Star, Death Star. I'll explain what I mean. The North Star is, what are the feelings that I want to experience in a relationship that help me know that I'm feeling loved. And those are my positive boundaries. These are the things I'm aiming for. These are the boundaries I'm encapsulated in. I want to feel respected. I want to feel seen. I want to feel cherished. I want to feel understood. I want to feel valued. And these are the boundary that the house of boundaries we've built around us. And we are inside of this love house of all the things we require. And this is what I'm available for. And we set a boundary with ourselves. And we say, I'm only available for relationships that reflect this truth around me, where I feel respected, valued, seen, heard, and understood. That is your North Star. That's what you're available for. And they're unique to everybody because everybody feels love differently. But on the other side of that is, what am I unavailable for? What are my Death Star feelings that I am no longer willing to settle for or tolerate anymore? I'm not going to tolerate rejection. I'm not going to tolerate abandonment. I'm not going to tolerate Jekyll and Hyde. I'm not going to tolerate constant criticism or judgment. I'm not going to tolerate any kind of abuse at all, mental, emotional, financial, physical. You have it. What are you unavailable for? And that very next step is a necessary kind of come to Jesus with yourself about, okay, I see I'm in this controlling pleaser pattern, or I see I'm in this cycle pattern of fixer victim, or I see I'm in this pattern of clinger withholder. I see the pattern I'm in. Now I need to set the boundary, not just with others, but first with self. What am I available for? What am I unavailable for? What's my North Star? What's my Death Star? What am I moving towards? And what am I moving away from? And sometimes, now we can spend a whole month just on that module, figuring out, because especially if you're enacting a pleaser role or a fixer role yourself, and you're so used to accommodating everybody else, being available, like knowing what others need even before they tell you what they need. You don't know what you need 9 times out of 10. You're like, how do I feel loved? Oh man, what am I available for? And that's why it leads me to the third point in your healing. You got to seek professional help. This isn't something that you want to try to do and figure out by yourself. And it's hard for us because so many of us that are fixers or heroes, or we're used to having all the answers or researching. We graduated from YouTube University, and we Googled Dr. Ramani, and we watched Surviving Narcissism, and we watched myself and Amber Hollingsworth and all the other people that, are talking about addiction and codependency and toxic relationships and narcissism. And we feel like we have a black belt in it, but yet we're still in it. And that's when you know that you can start to identify some of these things. What I'm telling you is ringing a bell. You're starting to see some of these patterns, but in order to break free from a pattern, it requires a professional to come alongside of you. Now, I would love to be that person for you because I want to help you, right? I want to help support you and help you go all the way. But if it's not me, then there are other ways you can go about it, from the free options like Al-Anon, which is a support group for spouses of addicts or alcoholics, or Nar-Anon, or ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, which is how many of us become codependents in the first place, as we grew up in this dynamic, or codependency anonymous meetings, where you could take the free route, or you could take a therapist route. You can hook yourself up with somebody that, specializes in addiction and codependency, or toxic relationships, and see that route, especially if you have insurance and you want to use that and take that route. Or if you want the coaching route and you want this type of experience, you can go to HeidiRain.com and learn about the coaching containers I have for you. But what I really want to encourage you to do is, don't be shy about needing somebody to come alongside of you. I know you're smart. I know you're capable. I know you're resilient. I know you're incredible. And I also know you're often last to come to the point where you're going to hire me, because you're like, oh God, I'm going to figure this out by myself. But you don't have to, and don't you deserve to feel supported? Don't you deserve to have that somebody have your best interest at heart and to come alongside of you? There's nothing like that feeling in the world. And many of us who are in these toxic relationship patterns aren't used to that. We don't know what it feels like to have somebody kind of pour into us and come alongside of us and be our advocate and be there for us. But I'm going to tell you what, right now, it is a freaking game changer when you believe in yourself enough to have somebody come alongside of you. And even myself, when I've hired people to come alongside of me, I vet them. I look at their stuff. I watch them. I make sure they know what they're talking about. So it's important when you hire somebody, it's not just anybody, right? You want to make sure they know what they're doing and they're capable and they're competent and they've done this before and they have a system, um, like me. Hello. Okay. All right. Moving on. Number 4. And this is, I always really underestimated this one, but I have to tell you what I found later in life is it probably is one of the most healing things we can do when we're trying to break free from a pattern. And that is taking a look around at our support systems around us. And why this is so important is so many people. First of all, I just used to do one-on-one only. I was a firm believer that I wanted like it with you personally, and I still do that, But what I've realized over the course of time is groups and semi-private coaching where it's a curated experience with other people just like you. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the power of finding your people is priceless. Finding your people who are like, know what you're going to say, have been down that path, can resonate with you, are picking up what you're laying down, they're smelling what you're stepping in, they're bagging what you're mowing. It's like, oh my God, you get me. So many of us feel like nobody gets us. We feel different. We feel like nobody really understands us. We feel like we can get everybody else, but nobody gets us. It is something to behold to see people inside of a group dynamic loving one another, come aboard with each other, and feel like they're amongst their peers. It is an incredible experience. And I used to think that the magic was done by me. Hey, I have all this experience, I have all this wisdom from experience, and all this energy I've spent into my training and development, and I'm going to give you the magic. But I have to tell you, I underestimated the magic you bring. When you enter into one of our group spaces and the wisdom you share and the experiences you share and how much that contributes and adds value to other human beings inside of that container is, again, priceless as well. And so people will come in usually to coaching because they have like one toxic relationship, right? This spouse or this partner, this person they're with. But what they find is as they go through this toxic relationship recovery course, they look around and they realize how polluted their relationships really are. They notice how unbalanced their friendships are or other work relationships. And they start to see, oh my God, I do need more advocates. I do need more people around me that are going to be in support of me changing and growing, not saying, who the hell do you think you are? Now you're better than everybody, or now you're changing. It's like we want to be supported with people who appreciate our growth, can cheer us on, aren't jealous or intimidated by our growth or by our changing, or aren't afraid of us changing and growing. There's something so amazing to be around a bunch of people who like want you to be the best version of yourself, applaud you for being the best version of yourself, and encourage you to be the best version of yourself and to have what you deserve and want you to have it and encourage you to have it, and aren't, again, intimidated by it or in judgment of it. They're excited for you. So you can't underestimate how important it is to have a support network on your road to healing. The last thing, let's just recap though, okay? Shall we? I think we should. The first thing is you need self-awareness when you're breaking free from a toxic pattern. You've got to know what your flavor of toxicity is. What is the toxic dance you're doing with your partner? What sides of the coin are you both flipping here with each other? If you're curious, you can go find out right now what that is by taking my codependent attachment personality pattern test over at HeidiRain.com, and it'll tell you your flavor of toxicity or codependency dysfunction. The second thing is boundaries, not just with other people. Yes, that comes, right? Being able to tell people, hey, don't do this. When you do this, I feel, fill in the blanks. Personal boundaries. You have to like come to this moment in time where you're like, what am I available for and what am I unavailable for? You get what you settle for. You experience what you tolerate. So it's like, I've got to have this come to Jesus moment with myself. What am I going for in my life? What is my North Star? What am I shooting for? What am I aiming for in my life? What kind of love do I want to experience? What kind of partnership do I want? And then go drive towards that North Star only. And do not engage in things that take you farther away. The next step after that is seek professional help in figuring that out. Let me come alongside of you. Come into one of my courses or hire me for some consultations, one-on-one action, or that sounded really weird. You know what I mean, for some coaching or consulting, or come inside of one of my group containers and let me help you figure out what is your North Star. What are you available for and unavailable for, and help you set those boundaries, or come into one of our workshops or join us at a retreat. The fourth thing is get involved with us as a cycle breaker nation. We are a nation of people finding our tribe. We are cycle breakers. We are here on a mission and a purpose to break free from these toxic patterns and to recognize them in other people and to help them break free too, right? If that's turning our codependency into a force for good, recognizing how we can help and support one another and getting involved with a group of people who celebrate you, who lift you up, who encourage you, who want you to be the best, who want you to be yourself, your authentic self, who celebrate all of your amazingness and your weirdness, and everything in between. And then the last thing that we want to, let me pull up my notes here, make sure that I'm said them all. Yep, professional sport. And the last thing is this path to self-love and healing, which most people get wrong. How do you really break a toxic pattern is you interrupt that pattern and then you install a new pattern. And the new pattern is the self-love system. It's a way to love yourself. And most people will get this wrong because they conflate self-love with self-care. They think self-love is going to the gym and exercising or eating a salad or, loving yourself unconditionally with your weight or how you look. And they make it like an outward thing. And it's still attached to something outside of yourself, where it's like, take a bath or, do something outside of yourself that's going to help you love yourself more. It's a care routine. Go for a bike ride, go for a run, all those things. And I used to say this all the time when I first started this work so many years ago, but the truth is there aren't enough bath bombs in the world to compensate for a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy. And when you are in a toxic relationship for a long time or a little time, it wears away and chips away at your love for yourself. It makes you believe lies about what you're worth, who you are at your core, and what you deserve and what's available to you. And it lies to you. And the only way out of that is to reinstall a new belief system. And that's what the self-love system is. That's what my toxic relationship recovery course is. It's a self-love system. It's not bath bombs and manicures. It's how do I know what my North Star is and set and hold those boundaries? How do I feel enough? How do I know what's enough? That I'm enough, you're enough, there's enough. Okay. It's enough. How do I know what enough is? How do I live in the present moment and not get sucked back into the drama and trauma of the past or project with anxiety into the future in my relationships? How do I release? How do I let go of those things that have hurt me and finally heal from them once and for all? That, my love, is a self-love system. And I would be happy to walk you through it. You can go over to HeidiRain.com and learn more. It's under the tab of toxic relationship and codependency recovery. All right. So hopefully that gives you a great overview today of the 5 things that you can do to break free from your toxic patterns in your relationships. And if you do nothing else today, just go do step 1. Step 1, again, is that awareness around what toxic patterns you have. And you can find that awareness in my codependency attachment personality pattern test. That's a mouthful, over at HeidiRain.com. I love you so much. Thanks for listening. We know that here we focus on addiction, codependency, and toxic relationship recovery. That happens to spell ACT, right? ACT. And I'm an acronym. I was going to say a bad word, but I love a good acronym. And what we want to say with ACT is the way out of this is to act. It is to take some massive action. It is to head over to HeidiRain.com, take that assessment, get involved in one of our courses, our self-study courses, or a coaching opportunity, and let's begin the path to healing and walk yourself back to your well-being. I love you. Take excellent care. I'll see you next week.